Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about The Lost Room episode 3. It's called The Comb. So spoilers for the episode as always. This is a Patreon sponsored review, so thank you very much to Fletcher for making the pick. So this one introduced more items, the comb being the main one, and it's got a pretty cool function, which initially looked like it was making someone go invisible perhaps for a second, but in actuality what it's doing is pausing time for a short period. And the reason why it looks like someone's turning invisible is because at least for the first bulk of the episode, later on, when Joe finally gets his hands on it, we finally see what it looks like from the perspective of this person using the comb. But for most of the episode, we're seeing it from the perspective of the other people in the scene, which just looks like someone's blinking out of existence and then popping up somewhere else. At one point, the camera even kind of follows as if it's following an invisible person, which really suggests that there's invisibility happening. But what it is actually a little bit cooler, because later on we get to see how that plays out during an action scene where Joe is using the comb to freeze time in the middle of a gunfight, and we get him jumping around, everything's pausing. Obviously, they eventually do the thing where there's a bullet almost about to hit him, and he just moves out the way of it, and it's like, oh shit, that was a closer call than I realized. But it's kind of funny watching him go to comb his hair every time he wants to freeze time. So that's kind of the biggest gimmick of the episode in terms of the new objects. There is another one, the Martin plot. The guy who turned bad last episode, who killed Joe's partner immediately, like it was Joe who did it. He ends up with an item as well, and that's a kind of a separate plot. Which I guess I'll start with him first, actually, since I brought him up. This is probably the part of the show so far that feels the most kind of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Not even hokey, that's not the right word, but it just kind of feels like his turn to villainy felt relatively out of nowhere. And I'm not necessarily mad, and I still enjoyed like kind of the end of it in this episode because he gets to a new item. That new item's kind of an interesting mechanic, because at first it doesn't sound that useful, the item that he ends up with, but I'll get to that in a second. But the first half of his plot this episode, which is just kind of dodging questions when another cop wants to ask him about what happened with Joe and his partner, and talking to his wife, and the wife being upset about everything and wanting some answers. Like, that stuff I wasn't feeling all that much. I was kind of like, I don't really care about this character as a person, as a character to follow, to really be invested in what they're doing. And even the mysterious phone calls from the Order who like, hey, we'll let you in our membership if you bring us an object. Like, all of that stuff in the first half of his storyline this episode, I was kind of just like, I felt like it was going through the motions because I didn't really care that much about him. And there's so many groups right now wanting these objects that this one just kind of feels the least interesting so far. However, once we actually get him looking for the object, which is this pair of glasses, and he goes to this woman who looks for the objects for people for a price, and he empties out his savings to pay this woman $5,000, and he gets this description, and I like that the way she finds it is because someone basically puts out like it wasn't a Reddit post, but it was something like that, where some mechanic was like, hey, I ended up with this pair of glasses, but whenever I put them on, the car won't start. And I kind of loved, one, that this is how someone finds an item, because someone's just posted online saying, what the hell, why are these glasses doing this weird thing? And the people who know what the items are like, wait, ding, 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 we need to go and get that. But I like how useless this sounds. A pair of glasses that when you wear them, your car won't start. It doesn't sound useful. It sounds weird, and maybe there's like a 1 in a million contexts where that might actually come in handy, where you want to pretend the car's broken down or something, so you put on the glasses to make it happen mysteriously. But other than that, what could it possibly be before? However, the actual thing that they're doing is they won't let anything combust, and that extends to beyond just car engines. We see that when Martin does go to get these glasses and the mechanic gets kind of threatening and doesn't want to give them to him, he basically just sets fire to some like gasoline that's dripped on the ground and sets the man on fire, which is kind of tied into like his turn to villainy, feeling kind of out of nowhere. Not only is he a bad guy who's willing to shoot someone, he sets someone on fire this episode. Like, he is like crazy. Like, he's way past the deep end, and that kind of feels again a little bit almost cartoony for what I felt about the character before his turn. But when he finds the glasses and he puts them on, the fire starts to disappear. It starts to like sort of reduce and then go away. And I'm like, oh, so it's like any type of combustion, right? And even combustion in this case has already happened. It kind of nullifies it. Like nothing can combust or continually burn when these glasses are being worn. Like who knows what the radius is? Maybe that'll come up in a future episode. But like, it was a kind of an interesting moment. But the more interesting part is that when he goes to this location to meet the Order, and it ends up being Frasier's manager from Frasier, who's like the main actress of the group that comes in. I think her name was BB on Frasier. Here, her name is Margaret. Yeah, I don't think we've heard that name before, but I could be wrong. But anyway, the actress Harriet Sampson Harris. Harriet Harris. That's a superhero alias if I've ever heard one. But she tests the glasses, right? When she sees him put them on, he's like, hey, I brought an item, and he's all nervous. She pulls out a gun, points it right in his forehead, point blank, and starts pulling the trigger. But nothing happens, because again, the firing of gunpowder would count as combustion. And this is how she tests it. And she doesn't really care if he dies, so it's like, hey, either this works or it doesn't. And afterwards, she's like, okay, you're in. But I actually loved that this was her method for testing. It was like, well, I hope you're telling the truth, and those are exactly what I think they are. Otherwise, you're about to die. But she doesn't say any of that. She just does it. And that's kind of the wrap up of that. So I wasn't necessarily feeling the early half of this plot line in this episode, but I did appreciate, one, the cool new item that has more uses than I expected. And I suppose the answer to like how big of a radius does this affect when he's wearing them is going to be important, because, okay, it stops a gun from firing at point blank, but what if someone's standing 15 feet away and points a gun and shoots it at you? Does it still protect you? Is that still in the radius, or is that outside the radius? I feel like if you're using these glasses as protection from gunfire, then you really need to know what the range of this like null effect is before you can like safely go into a situation. So I'll be curious if that comes up, but at the same time, maybe the Order's just got the glasses now and they won't factor into much after this. I don't know. Because as they keep saying, there's like 100+ items, so like we're not going to see them all, and not all the ones we do see are going to be heavily featured. So, but they've set these ones up, they've put some time into it, and they seem like they could have some interesting uses, especially since, like I said, there might be rules as to how far of a distance they affect and that kind of thing. But that was that plot. The Joe plot, the main plot, if you will. He's having nightmares in the hotel. He dreams that the phone rings and his daughter's on the phone inside the motel room. That's not the case. Of course, he wakes up, but he's kind of between a rock and a hard place early on in this episode. He goes to Jennifer from the Legion, right? All these organizations I need to keep track of in my head, and tries to get help from her. Turns over the items he has that aren't the key, the other couple of things that he's collected, the pen and whatnot. And she is like, hey, you want to look for this person or whatever. But he also gets kidnapped off the street by men who work for Carl. Carl being the guy, the rich guy who the clock was stolen from last episode. And they shoot him in the back with a shotgun, but the coat's indestructible. This is the one that he got before, so that does protect him. And Carl's then tactic isn't to just like rough him up. He kind of like tries to talk to him, and they do kind of end up seeing somewhat eye to eye, where Joe's like, look, I need that key to get my daughter back. And Carl seems to be genuine when he says he's sorry about the daughter. He kind of lets Joe go. And then Joe actually ends up coming back relatively quickly once he gets the key back. He basically stashed it in a homeless guy when he was on the run before he got kidnapped. And he brings his clock back. He's looking at the clock, and it cuts to him bringing the clock back. And we find out that Carl needs the key so that he can get into a vault that someone built containing a lot of these items some years ago, back in the 60s, when it was a whole thing. And it goes into some of the backstory, which was like an Order kind of collected almost all the objects, put them in a vault, but then he kind of phrased it in a way where it wasn't sure if they all turned on each other, or if they just kind of got corrupted by the items and ended up most of them dying. But the survivors, they had this vault where they put a bunch of the items, And he wants to get a specific item out of that, a glass eye, because it'll heal flesh, is the way he phrases it. And then we find out his son has leukemia. So it kind of sets up why him and Joe might see eye to eye, no pun intended, because they're both trying to save their children. So maybe they understand that, hey, if we help each other, he's like, hey, I'm keeping the key until I get my daughter back, but I have no reason to not help you too, necessarily. So that sort of sends them on the path of this person that Carl recommends finding, who has the comb, and he ends up going back to Jennifer to try and ask for help to find this person. But she gets quite pissy when she realizes that he's made a deal with Carl, and even asks her superiors on the phone, should I bring him in and just, like, you know, steal the key from him? And they're like, no, we want him to, like, ultimately build trust. Just stick with him, help him, and, like, hopefully he'll eventually make the right choice to pick our side. So I think we as the audience don't really know what side is the right side, honestly, right now. It feels like the order that Martin's went to seems particularly villainous right now, but again, that could be just how it appears. That said, though, they did seem to be willing to just kill him right there and then, so they do seem quite villainous. Carl seems like he's maybe got a good reason for what he's doing, even if he's willing to go too far to achieve it. And then the Legion, like, they seem like they might be the good guys. I mean, Jennifer seems to like hate the fact that she's killed someone at the end of the episode, which at least makes her a little sympathetic. But I don't know. It's actually tough to say who. Like, it feels like at any point they could do a bit of a twist here as to who the really villainous group is, and it might not be the group we're expecting potentially. You know, I could see it going a number of ways on that front, but. That leads to looking for the guy with the comb, Mr. Harold Stritsky. Now, the name implies Eastern European of some kind, right? Maybe Russian or whatever. And the first time he spoke, we see like a little scene of him in like a store, and he uses his comb and he disappears and he steals the money in the till, the cash register, and we see him use the comb a couple times, and it kind of like gets across. It doesn't fully explain it. Like I said, it was kind of mysterious how it was working up front, and then it got clearer as it went on. But it was a little introduction to the character. It worked quite well. I thought it was a good little scene. But I thought his Russian accent was a bit weird. And I recognized the actor. I couldn't quite place like what I knew him from, but I'm like, oh, I recognize this guy, and he is definitely doing an accent right now. And I will say that for as much as I enjoyed the plot with the comb for the rest of the episode, I loved like Joe like having to chase him down and try and figure out how to get around him like disappearing every 5 seconds, and he ends up using the key to go into the motel and appear behind them at one point to sort of sneak up on him. Again, fun use of the mechanics to try and like outwit the other person who has an item with an ability. But this guy's accent was something. Like it was deviating so much. There was times when it was slipping into like generic American, and that still didn't sound quite right. It still sounded quite fake. Maybe the idea was that he's been in America for so long that he's picked up the accent or something. And then there was 1 or 2 moments where I heard something specific slip through the accent. I heard Scottish slipping through the accent, and it suddenly clicked that I think this is a Scottish actor. I think that's like when I've seen him before, I think he's been Scottish and things. And I did a quick check, and sure enough, it is. So he actually has a Scottish accent, and he's doing, I think, like a Russian accent that sometimes just sounds more American, but equally fake. It's a really weird, frankly awful mix of accents that's coming out of his mouth. It was hard to take any of the accent stuff from him seriously. So I'm getting that out of the way. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it was a thing. So, there it is. But the character is very scared. He wants to run away, and Joe effectively tricks him with a bunch of combs from a barber shop so that he doesn't know which one is right, and gets him in the motel room. But when he kind of like managed to calm him down a little bit and talk to him, he's like, look, I don't want you to take your comb away for good. I don't want you to steal it from you. I want you to show me how it works. I need your help. My daughter disappeared in the room. I need to get her. He appeals to him. He tries to calm down and talk to him and say, hey, I'm not trying to kill you. And we actually got a quick scene earlier on where a random woman tried to kill him to get the comb. It's a thing that he's clearly going through on a day-to-day basis. It's why he's so twitchy and so nervous. So ultimately, he does show him how to use the comb, and this is the first time we see time freeze because Joe uses it, and we see everything go completely still. It sets up an interesting little rule here, which maybe will come up if we get the comb again later on in the show. Is that the guy, what's his name, Harold? He says, "Hey, try and take this wallet out of my hand when time is frozen. I bet you can." So sure enough, Joe freezes time with the comb, and he tries to take it out of his hand, but he can't. It's like it's locked in there tight, and it's almost like when time is frozen, it's not about strength. It's just this idea that if something's frozen in time and you've got like a grip on something, like nothing's going to break that grip. Which begs the question, like if he got like a crowbar and tried to like break his fingers in those like 10 seconds, because that's what he says, like 10 seconds at most is how long the time freeze lasts, and you get motion sick. So because we see him getting kind of vomity like all episode. Harold's clearly sick all the time and he's taking pills for it. So it's like, okay, that's an interesting mechanic that doesn't come up too much in this episode, which makes me think we're going to see the comb again in a later episode where that becomes more relevant. I could be wrong. And it's not that you can't move things when time is frozen. It's just that if someone has a grip on something or something's wedged, it takes more strength. At the very least, it takes a lot more strength than it actually would take in normal time to pry, in this case, fingers open. But, obviously I'm assuming it applies to anything that may have a grip on something or anything that's wedged in somewhere or whatever. It's like a relativity thing almost. So I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting playing with these rules. I will say, I don't think this episode has as much fun playing with the mechanics as the first two did. I think episode 2 had tons of it. This one pulls it a little bit. I do like that when we do get to the shootout, when Joe goes with this guy Harold to a place because it was his auntie who was part of this old group, and she had like a trailer out in the woods, and they go out there, and he finds these Polaroids that are kind of vague. They look like from like a rundown building or something. He tries to burn one of the Polaroids, and it won't burn, so he thinks it's an item. He's not really sure. But when this happens, Jennifer shows back up because he ditched Jennifer when he went running after this guy, and Jennifer's pissed and he's like, "Hey, you promised you'd get us the comb when this is all said and done." And Joe's like, "No, I promise I won't take your comb." And there's a bit of a standoff with like, is Joe going to try and take his comb or not? And to be fair, I don't think the audience thought for a second that once Joe promised them that he wouldn't take his comb from him because that's all he has, I don't think the audience had any reason to not believe Joe. I think Joe ultimately wants to be the nice guy to him more than anything else, and he's willing to screw over any deals that he's made with Jennifer. That said, though, at the end of all the shootout stuff that happens, when these like 4 people come out with sniper rifles, and Joe starts freezing time and running around and hitting them, and he gets saved by Jennifer at one point. Jennifer is about to get hit with a bullet. He freezes time and he hits it away with like a shovel or something like that. And it's all fairly fun stuff. She feels kind of sad about having to kill someone. It's the first time she's ever killed someone, so that's kind of a big deal for her character. And he feels that she's a little bit vulnerable in that moment. But Harold decides that he doesn't want to comb back. He's like, "Hey, you keep it. I don't want to be shot at anymore. I'm ready to move on with life." Now, it is worth mentioning that he was doing something a little skeevy with his power. One of the things that we found earlier on when they were looking for him and where they eventually run into him is that apparently he was using his power to like jump into the women's locker room at a gym and take a photo when time was frozen. Now, we know it only lasts up to 10 seconds, so presumably he was like running in, snap, and running back it. And that's all he'd have time for. But still, very skeevy, so he's got some growth to do, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, but I think all this stuff with the comb was fun, and these photographs lead to a very intriguing cliffhanger, I will say. So he's on better terms with Jennifer, seemingly, at the end of this, because he hands over the comb to her, and basically he goes after Wally, and we kind of play with this idea that Wally's pissed that Joe just keeps like finding him by like backtracing anyone he sends to that road. And he finds him though, and he's like, "Hey, there's a note in one of these Polaroids, and it's the location that your bus ticket's also going to, I think, in New Mexico." And he's like, "Hey, what is this? Do you know what this is? You need to show me what this is." And he's like, "Look, once you see this, you're going to go crazy. Like, it'll ruin your life like it does everyone else." And he's like, "I have no choice. I need to find my daughter." So he's like, hey, show me. So he taps Joe with the bus ticket, and then he taps himself with the bus ticket. They both land in that same location we've seen, and they go walking down the road for, you know, an amount of time. It's a bit unclear how long. It may only be 10 minutes, might be an hour, who knows. But the cliffhanger at the end of the episode is they get to the motel. The motel that the room is in, that he always goes to, the magic room, this is the real location it's based on, right? And it's a lot more run down, right? It's not like this, you know, because every time he's in there, it's always sunny outside and everything looks, I wouldn't say pristine necessarily, but everything looks functional. Everything looks like it's still being used. Here, when they arrive there, though, it looks run down. The sign's kind of falling apart. It's clearly been abandoned for some time. So I do think this is a really cool cliffhanger. This idea they're going to be searching around the kind of the ruins and the remains of the real place is a kind of a unique, kind of fun thing to add into the mystery. That feels that we're going to get to kind of the root of like some of the stuff that the show has been sort of building to potentially. I don't know. I honestly, like, as far as like a cliffhanger goes in a mystery show, I thought this was a really cool hook because we've been setting up this motel in some form, and now we're at the real place. So what is it like in the real world versus the magic version that he's in when he goes into the room? What clues are going to be here as to what happened? And has it been this way since 1961, which is the year that all the items seem to come into being, right? All these items became these items in 1961. So has it been this way since then? That's a good question as well. So I'm very intrigued. I think this is a really cool hook. As far as the ongoing main mystery goes, the idea of like him getting to the real motel in the real world is so fascinating. And like, does anything special happen if he uses the key on the real room? These are interesting questions, and it's all left me very excited for the next part. So I really can't fault the episode, all on a dodgy accent, and maybe the side plot was a little bit uninteresting at first, but it got to more interesting places by the end. But the main plot, like once we got to the problem solving of how to catch someone who's got a comb that can freeze time, and then using that comb to win in a gunfight was fun stuff. But the actual build to the ending with the motel was really cool. So having said that, it's probably my least favorite episode of the three so far. And that's okay. Like, it's still pretty damn good, but it's definitely the one where they had maybe the least highs out of the 45 minutes of watching. But that is my thoughts on The Lost Room episode 3, The Comb. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments. If you've seen it, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help all the reviews keep coming, both here and over in the movie channel, MailFuzz Movies, where all the movie podcasts live. But that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?